Ryan Mercer never imagined that fixing a broken thermostat would put him at gunpoint, cost him his job, and shatter everything he'd worked 7 years to protect. But when armed security dragged him out of a billionaire CEO's private suite while alarms screamed through Seattle's most powerful tower, he realized some mistakes don't come with second chances, and some people's secrets are worth killing to protect. If you want to see how a single father caught between corporate conspiracy and a CEO's hidden breakdown survives when his daughter's future hangs in the balance, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment with your city name so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. The rain hit Seattle like it had a personal grudge that Thursday evening, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon and making the walk from the bus stop to the apartment feel twice as long as it actually was. Ryan Mercer pulled his jacket tighter around his chest and quickened his pace, his work boots splashing through puddles he couldn't see in the dark. His daughter would be waiting. She always was. 7 years old and already too smart for her own good, Emma had learned to unlock the apartment door herself when Mrs. Chen from downstairs couldn't make it up in time. Ryan hated that she had to do that. Hated that his shifts ran late more often than not. Hated that a second grader knew how to heat up leftovers in the microwave and do her homework alone at the kitchen table, while he fixed broken elevators and busted HVAC systems in buildings that cost more than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes. But hating it didn't change it. That was the deal when you raised a kid by yourself on a maintenance worker's salary. "Daddy!" Emma's voice cut through the sound of rain hammering the windows the moment he opened the door. She launched herself off the couch and wrapped her arms around his waist before he could even kick off his boots. "Hey, monkey." Ryan ruffled her dark hair, still damp from her after-school shower. "You eat?" "Mrs. Chen made dumplings. I saved you 4, you chat." "4 whole dumplings? You spoil me." Emma grinned up at him with that gap-toothed smile that made every lousy day worth it. "She said you work too hard. Mrs. Chen talks too much." But he smiled anyway, peeling off his jacket and hanging it on the hook by the door. The apartment was small, one bedroom that Emma claimed while he took the couch, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, and a bathroom with a toilet that ran unless you jiggled the handle just right. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, and the rent was paid on time every month because Ryan Mercer didn't miss payments. Not ever. "How was school?" he asked, heading to the kitchen to find the dumplings Emma had wrapped in foil. "Boring. We did fractions again." "You understand them?" "Yeah, they're easy." Ryan bit back a smile. Emma had her mother's brain, sharp, quick, and way too good at math for someone who still watched cartoons on Saturday mornings. That was about the only thing she'd inherited from Lauren, though. Everything else, the stubbornness, the crooked smile, the way she chewed her bottom lip when she concentrated, that was all Ryan. Lauren had walked out 3 years ago. Just packed a bag one morning while Emma was at preschool and left a note on the counter that said she couldn't do it anymore. No explanation, no phone number, no forwarding address. Ryan had spent the first 6 months panicking, wondering if she'd come back, if he'd done something wrong, if he could fix it. Then he'd spent the next 6 months angry, and after that, he'd just moved on. Emma never asked about her anymore. Ryan wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. "You got homework?" he asked, biting into a dumpling that had gone cold but still tasted like heaven. "Finished it already?" "All of it?" "Dad, it's 2nd grade." He laughed despite himself. "All right, smarty pants. Bedtime in an hour." "Can I watch 1 episode?" "1, and nothing weird." Emma was already diving back toward the couch and the tablet propped on the coffee table before he finished the sentence. Ryan watched her for a second, his chest doing that tight thing it always did when he realized how fast she was growing up. 7 years old. Soon it'd be 8, then 10. Then she'd be a teenager who didn't want dumplings with her old man anymore. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Ryan pulled it out, frowning at the screen. Work. Of course it was work. Emergency call. Executive floor climate control failure. Report to Hayes Tower immediately. Overtime approved. He read it twice, then checked the time. Almost 8:30. Emma would be asleep by 9, but Mrs. Chen didn't do late-night babysitting anymore, not since her hip surgery. She looked up from the tablet. "I gotta go back out for a little bit." Her face fell. "Now?" "It's an emergency. Big building, broken heater. I'll be back before you wake up, okay? Ekgolg. Can't someone else do it?" Ryan crouched down next to the couch, so they were eye level. If someone else could do it, they wouldn't have called me. You're going to be fine. Doors locked, phone charged. You know the rules. Emma nodded, but she didn't look happy about it. I'll bring you back a donut, Ryan added. That got a little smile. Chocolate? Obviously. With sprinkles? I'm not a monster. She giggled, and Ryan pressed a kiss to the top of her head before standing up and grabbing his jacket again. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it was coming down harder now, turning the streets into a blurred mess of headlights and reflections. Ryan caught the bus heading downtown and spent the 20-minute ride staring out the window, thinking about overtime pay and whether Emma's winter coat would make it through another season. Hayes Tower rose out of the Seattle skyline like a blade of glass and steel, 73 floors of corporate power and wealth that Ryan only ever saw from the service entrances. He'd been working there for 3 years, mostly handling maintenance requests in the lower floors. Busted lights, stuck doors, the occasional plumbing disaster. The executive floors were a different world. Separate elevator access, private security. People who made more in a day than Ryan made in a year. He'd never been called up there before. The security guard at the service entrance barely looked at him when Ryan scanned his ID badge. Climate control? Yeah. Executive suite, 72nd floor. Take the service elevator to 70, then the stairs. Security will meet you up there. Ryan nodded and headed for the elevator, shaking rain out of his hair. The building was almost empty this time of night, just a few cleaning crews and the overnight security team. The service elevator groaned as it climbed, the metal walls covered in scratches and dents from years of equipment being hauled up and down. When the doors opened on the 70th floor, the difference was immediate. Carpet instead of concrete. Soft lighting instead of fluorescent glare. Everything up here smelled like money. Ryan found the stairwell and climbed 2 more floors, his toolbox weighing heavy in his hand. A security guard was waiting at the top, a big guy with a shaved head and a radio clipped to his belt. Mercer? That's me. Climate control system's been glitching all day. Kicked into overdrive about an hour ago. 72 degrees in some offices, 50 in others. Executive suite's the worst. Which one's the executive suite? The guard pointed down the hall. End of the corridor, Ms. Hayes' office. But she's still in there, so keep it quiet. Ryan blinked. She's working this late? She's always working. The guard's expression didn't change. You got 30 minutes. After that, I'm pulling you out whether you're done or not. Got it. Ryan walked down the corridor, his boots silent on the plush carpet. The walls up here were floor-to-ceiling windows on one side, offering a view of the city that made his stomach drop just looking at it. On the other side, frosted glass doors marked with names he didn't recognize. Executives, vice presidents, people who lived in a different universe. At the end of the hall, a set of double doors stood slightly ajar. No name on these, just a sleek keypad and a small brass plaque that read private. Ryan hesitated. The guard had said the executive suite. This had to be it. He knocked once. No answer. Miss Hayes? He pushed the door open a few inches. Maintenance. I'm here about the climate control. Still nothing. Ryan stepped inside. The office was massive, easily the size of his entire apartment. A desk that looked like it cost more than his car sat near the windows, papers spread across it in neat stacks. Bookshelves lined one wall. A leather couch occupied the other. And in the center of the room, a woman stood with her back to him, staring out at the city below. She didn't turn around. Ms. Hayes? Ryan said again, quieter this time. I'm here to fix the... Get out! Her voice was low, tight, like she was holding something back. Ryan froze. I'm sorry, I just need to access the control panel. It'll only take a... I said get out! This time she turned, and Ryan saw her face for the first time. Olivia Hayes. He'd seen her before. Pictures in the building lobby. Articles in the break room. The 30-year-old CEO of Hayes Corporation. The woman who'd taken over her father's company at 25 and turned it into a billion-dollar empire. In every photo, she looked untouchable. Polished. Perfect. The woman standing in front of him now looked like she was coming apart at the seams. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders in a way that looked more desperate than deliberate. Her jacket was gone, her blouse wrinkled, and her hands were shaking. I didn't mean to, Ryan started. You're not supposed to be in here. I was told to. You're not supposed to be in here. Her voice cracked on the last word. And Ryan saw it then, the panic in her eyes, the way her breathing had gone shallow and fast. She wasn't angry. She was terrified. And then the alarms went off. The sound was deafening, high-pitched and relentless, echoing through the office like a scream. Red lights flashed along the walls. Ryan stumbled backward, his toolbox hitting the floor with a crash. "What the hell?" The double doors slammed open. Security poured into the room, 4 guards, all of them armed, all of them shouting. Ryan barely had time to raise his hands before 2 of them grabbed him, yanking his arms behind his back hard enough to make his shoulders scream. "Wait! I was told to come up here! On the ground! Now!" They shoved him down, his knees hitting the carpet. Someone's boot pressed into his back, pinning him in place. Ryan tried to twist his head to see Olivia, but all he caught was a glimpse of her standing frozen by the window, her face white as paper. "I didn't do anything," Ryan shouted over the alarms. "I'm maintenance. Check my ID, check the work order." No one was listening. One of the guards was on his radio, barking codes Ryan didn't understand. Another was going through his toolbox, dumping wrenches and screwdrivers onto the floor like they were evidence at a crime scene. The boot on his back pressed harder. "Miss Hayes." The head guard stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Are you hurt?" Olivia didn't answer right away. She was staring at Ryan, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Hayes?" "No." Her voice was barely audible. "I'm fine." "This man was found in your private suite without authorization." "I know." "We're taking him into custody until we can verify." "I said I'm fine." Olivia's voice sharpened, and the guard went quiet. She turned away, facing the window again. "Get him out of here." They hauled Ryan to his feet, his arms still pinned behind him. His mind was racing, trying to piece together what had just happened. He'd followed the work order, done exactly what he was told, and now he was being dragged out of the building like a criminal, while the richest woman in Seattle stood 10 feet away and didn't say a word to stop it. "This is a mistake," Ryan said, his voice hoarse. "I was told to come up here." The guards didn't respond. They marched him out of the office, down the corridor, into the stairwell. The alarms were still screaming. Ryan's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might crack a rib. "I have a daughter," he said, hating how desperate he sounded. "I need to call her. She's home alone. You'll get your phone call at the station." "Station? I didn't—" The guard shoved him forward, and Ryan stumbled, catching himself on the railing. His toolbox was gone. His ID badge was gone. Everything he'd walked into that building with had been taken, and no one would tell him why. They brought him down to the ground floor in the service elevator, then through a side exit to a waiting security vehicle. The rain was still pouring, soaking through Ryan's shirt in seconds. They put him in the back seat, and the door slammed shut with a finality that made his stomach turn. Through the window, Ryan could see Hayes Tower rising into the night. 73 floors of glass and steel and money. The kind of place where people like him were invisible, right up until the moment they became a problem. He thought about Emma asleep on the couch, about the rent due in 2 weeks, about the promotion he'd been promised if he kept his head down and didn't screw up. And he thought about the look on Olivia Hayes' face when the alarms went off. Not angry, not cold, afraid. They kept him in a holding room for 4 hours. It wasn't a police station, just a private security office in the basement of Hayes Tower, windowless and cold, with a metal table and 2 chairs bolted to the floor. Ryan sat with his hands folded in front of him, staring at the door, and trying not to think about Emma waking up and finding him gone. No one came to explain. No one came to apologize. They just left him there, alone, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and his thoughts spiraling into worse and worse scenarios. When the door finally opened, it wasn't a guard. It was a man in a suit, mid-40s, gray at the temples, carrying a folder that Ryan knew wasn't good news. Ryan Mercer. The man sat down across from him, flipping the folder open. Maintenance technician, employed by Hayes Tower for 3 years. No disciplinary record, no prior incidents. He looked up. "Until tonight." "I didn't do anything wrong," Ryan said. His voice came out rough. "I followed the work order. I was told to report to the executive floor." "There was no work order." Ryan's stomach dropped. "What?" "The service request that appeared in your system tonight did not originate from our dispatch team." Someone created a false entry using administrative credentials. That's impossible. I got a text. We've seen the text. It came from a spoofed number using Hayes Tower's internal system. The man leaned back in his chair. Someone wanted you on that floor, Mr. Mercer, and they wanted Ms. Hayes to find you there. Why the hell would anyone? That's what we're trying to determine. The man's expression didn't change. In the meantime, you're suspended pending investigation. Security escort off the premises. Surrender your ID badge and building access immediately. Ryan's hands curled into fists under the table. I have a daughter. I need this job. Then you should have been more careful about which doors you walked through. I was set up. Or maybe. The man closed the folder. But until we know for sure, you're a liability. And Hayes Corporation doesn't tolerate liabilities. They gave him back his phone and his wallet, but kept his ID badge in his toolbox. A guard escorted him to the service exit and watched while Ryan stepped out into the rain, which had finally started to ease into a miserable drizzle. The city was waking up, early morning traffic beginning to clog the streets, lights flickering on in apartment windows. Ryan pulled out his phone and saw 6 missed calls from Mrs. Chen. He called her back. She answered on the first ring. Ryan, where are you? Emma's been calling for you all night. I'm on my way home. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll explain when I get there. What happened? I don't know. And that was the worst part. He genuinely didn't know. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The bus ride home felt twice as long as the one the night before. Ryan sat in the back, his head against the window, watching Seattle blur past. Suspended, investigated, set up. None of it made sense. He was nobody. A maintenance worker who fixed broken things and kept his head down. Why would anyone go through the trouble of framing him? And why had Olivia Hayes looked so afraid? By the time he got home, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table with Mrs. Chen, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw him, she ran straight into his arms. You said you'd be back before I woke up. I know, monkey. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen said something bad happened. Ryan shot the older woman a look, but Mrs. Chen just shrugged. She deserves to know. He sighed and knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. There was a mix-up at work. I got in trouble for something I didn't do, but it's going to be okay. Are you fired? Not fired, just taking a break. For how long? I don't know yet. Emma's bottom lip trembled. Did I do something wrong? No, baby, no. Ryan pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. But even as he said it, Ryan felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. Rent, groceries, bills, Emma's school supplies. He had maybe 3 weeks of savings if he stretched it. After that, they were done. Mrs. Chen made tea and left quietly, squeezing Ryan's shoulder on her way out. Emma eventually went to her room to get ready for school, and Ryan sat at the kitchen table staring at his phone. He should call someone. A lawyer, maybe. But lawyers cost money he didn't have. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ryan almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. Hello? Mr. Mercer. The voice on the other end was cool, clipped, familiar. The voice on, This is Olivia Hayes. Ryan's entire body went rigid. How did you get my number? That's not important. What's important is that I need to see you. I don't think that's a good idea, Tut. I know you were set up last night. I know someone used my security system to trap you in my office. And I know you're about to lose everything because of it. Ryan said nothing. Meet me tonight, 9 o'clock. There's a coffee shop on Pine Street called The Grind. Come alone. Why should I trust you? Because right now, I'm the only person who believes you're innocent. The line went dead. Ryan sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in his hand. Every instinct told him to ignore it, walk away, protect Emma, and stay as far from Olivia Hayes and her world as possible. But she'd said she believed him, and that was more than anyone else had done. The Grind was exactly the kind of place Ryan expected a billionaire CEO would never set foot in. Cramped, dimly lit, with mismatched furniture and an espresso machine that sounded like it was dying. He got there 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he couldn't afford, and sat in the corner booth facing the door. Olivia Hayes walked in at 9:03. She wasn't wearing a suit this time. Just jeans, a dark sweater, and a baseball cap pulled low over her face. If Ryan hadn't been looking for her, he never would have recognized her. She scanned the room, spotted him, and walked over without hesitation. Mr. Mercer. Miss Hayes. Opo a chang ying. She slid into the booth across from him, her hands folded on the table. Up close, she looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Nothing like the polished CEO from the photos. You came, she said. You said you believed me. I do. Why? Olivia was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the table. Because what happened last night wasn't the first time someone's used my security system against me. And you're not the first person who's been hurt because of it. Ryan leaned forward. What are you talking about? There's someone inside my company sabotaging me. I don't know who, I don't know why, but they've been manipulating building systems, security protocols, surveillance footage. They made it look like you broke into my office. They set off the alarms to make sure security would respond with force. And they did it to send me a message. What message? That no one is safe. Olivia's voice dropped. Not even me. Ryan studied her face, looking for any sign that this was another setup. But all he saw was fear. The same fear he'd seen in her office the night before. If that's true, why are you telling me? Why not go to the police? Because I don't know who I can trust inside the company. And because... She hesitated. Because you saved my life last night. I didn't save anyone. I got arrested. You came into my office when you thought I was in trouble. You didn't run. You tried to help. Olivia met his eyes. That's more than most people would have done. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. I need your help, Mr. Mercer. I need someone who doesn't have a stake in this company. Someone who can't be bought or threatened. Someone who knows the building systems better than anyone. I'm suspended. I can't get into the building. I can get you in. I can get you anywhere. Olivia's voice hardened. But I need to know if you're willing. Because whoever's doing this won't stop. And if we're going to catch them, it's going to get dangerous. Ryan thought about Emma, about the rent, about 3 weeks of savings, and a future that was slipping further away every second. If I help you, what do I get? Your job back, a promotion, financial security for you and your daughter? Olivia didn't blink. And the truth. Ryan almost laughed. He'd spent his whole life chasing the truth about Lauren, about why some people had everything while others had nothing, about whether any of it mattered. And here was Olivia Hayes, one of the richest women in the world, offering it to him like it was something she could just hand over. When do we start? He asked. Olivia smiled for the first time since she'd sat down. It didn't reach her eyes. Tomorrow night. Ryan spent the next day trying to explain to Emma why he wasn't going to work without actually explaining anything at all. She sat across from him at breakfast, pushing cereal around her bowl with a spoon, her eyes too knowing for a 7-year-old. You're going back tonight, aren't you? Just for a little while? To fix the thing you got in trouble for? Something like that, Sal. Emma didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue either. She'd learned early that arguing didn't change things. Ryan hated that she knew that. Hated that his daughter had already figured out the world didn't care about fair. Mrs. Chen agreed to stay late again, though she gave Ryan a look that said she had questions she wasn't asking yet. He promised to be back before midnight, kissed Emma on the forehead, and left the apartment feeling like he was walking towards something he couldn't take back. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting the city lights in broken patterns that shifted with every passing car. Ryan caught the bus downtown and got off 3 blocks from Hayes Tower, keeping his head down as he walked. Olivia had sent him a text an hour earlier with instructions that sounded like something out of a spy movie. Service entrance, 3rd door on the left, maintenance tunnel access, bring tools. He still had his personal toolbox at home, the one he'd bought himself years ago, before Hayes Tower, before Emma, back when he still thought he might make something of himself. It felt lighter than the company-issued one. Or maybe that was just him. The service entrance was unmanned this time of night. The security guard station empty except for a flickering monitor showing camera feeds from around the building. Ryan pushed through the door, half expecting alarms to start screaming again, but nothing happened. The hallway beyond was concrete and fluorescent lights, familiar territory. He found the third door and pulled it open. Olivia was waiting on the other side. She looked different again. Black jacket, dark pants, her hair pulled back tight. All business. She glanced at her watch when she saw him. "You're late. Traffic." "The bus doesn't have traffic at 9:30. Ryan didn't have an answer for that, so he just followed her down the hallway into the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the building. He'd been down here 100 times, knew every pipe and junction box, every shortcut through the maze of corridors that kept Hayes Tower running. But walking through it with Olivia Hayes felt surreal, like reality had tilted sideways and forgotten to tell him. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Server room, sublevel 2. "That's restricted access. Not for me." They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Ryan kept expecting someone to jump out and stop them, but the tunnels were deserted. Most of the building's security focused on the upper floors, the public spaces, the places where people like Olivia were supposed to be. Down here, nobody cared. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said finally. "Go ahead." "Last night in your office, you weren't just working late, were you?" Olivia didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. "No." "What were you doing?" "Trying not to fall apart." The honesty of it caught Ryan off guard. He'd expected deflection, maybe anger, not the truth. "The panic attacks?" Olivia continued, still not looking at him. "They started about 6 months ago. Used to be once a week. Now it's almost every night. My therapist says it's stress. My doctor says it's anxiety. My board of directors doesn't know, because if they did, they'd have me removed so fast my head would spin. So you hide. So I manage." She stopped at a junction, checking the corridor numbers on the wall. "This way." Ryan followed her through another turn, past a maintenance closet he'd restocked just last week. "If you're dealing with that much pressure, why not step down? Let someone else run the company?" Olivia's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Because Hayes Corporation is my father's legacy. Because I spent the last 5 years proving I could do this. Because the moment I show weakness, there are a dozen people waiting to take everything I've built and tear it to pieces." She glanced back at him. "You don't walk away from that. You fight, even when you're terrified, even when you can't breathe." "You guys sights?" "What?" They reached the server room door. Olivia swiped her keycard and the lock clicked open. Inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Rows of servers hummed in the darkness, their indicator lights blinking green and red, like a constellation frozen in time. The room smelled like ozone and cold air. "What are we looking for?" Ryan asked. "Evidence." Olivia moved to a terminal in the corner and typed in a series of commands that made the screen light up with lines of code Ryan didn't understand. Whoever set you up had to access the building's work order system. That system logs every entry, every change, every user ID that touches it. "So we find the ID that created the fake work order." "Exactly." Ryan set his toolbox down and watched her work. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard, pulling up screens and files, scrolling through data that blurred together. After a few minutes, she leaned back with a frustrated sigh. "It's been wiped. The entire log for that night is gone." "Can they do that?" "Not without administrator access." Olivia's jaw tightened, which means it's someone high up, someone with clearance. "How many people have that kind of access?" "Oh, maybe 20. Senior executives, IT directors, head of security." She pulled up another screen. "But there's a backup system. Secondary logs that mirror the primary server. They're supposed to be read-only, but if I can access them..." A sound echoed through the server room. Footsteps. Close. Olivia's head snapped up. "Someone's coming." "I thought you said this area was clear." "It was supposed to be." Ryan grabbed his toolbox and looked around for somewhere to hide. But the server room was all open space and narrow aisles between equipment racks. No cover, no exits except the door they'd come through. The footsteps got louder. "Get down!" Olivia hissed, dropping to a crouch behind the terminal. Ryan followed, squeezing into the gap between the desk and the server rack. His heart was hammering against his ribs. If they got caught down here after hours, there'd be no explaining it away. Olivia might be the CEO, but even she couldn't justify sneaking around her own building like a thief. The door opened. Two security guards walked in, their radios crackling with static. Ryan held his breath. "Temperature's stable," one of them said, checking a tablet. "No alerts." "Yeah, well, dispatch said there was a fluctuation. Just do a sweep." They moved through the aisles, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan pressed himself flatter against the floor, praying they wouldn't check behind the terminal. Next to him, Olivia had gone completely still, her face pale in the glow of the server lights. One of the guards stopped 5 feet away. "You smell that?" "Smell what?" "I don't know. Something." Ryan's stomach dropped. He'd been wearing the same jacket for 2 days, still damp from the rain, probably reeking of sweat and fear. Of course they could smell it. The guard took a step closer. And then Olivia's phone rang. Not loud, just a soft vibration from her pocket. But in the silence of the server room, it might as well have been a siren. The guard's flashlight swung toward them. "Hey! Cha Arna say." Olivia stood up before Ryan could stop her, her expression shifting into something cold and authoritative in half a second. "Is there a problem?" The guards froze, their flashlights now illuminating the CEO of Hayes Corporation standing in her own server room at 10 o'clock at night. For a moment, nobody moved. "Ms. Hayes," one of them finally managed, "we didn't know you were down here." "What's—" Clearly, Olivia's voice could have cut glass. "I'm running diagnostics on the security logs, private diagnostics, which means I don't need an audience. We were just responding to—" "I know what you were responding to, and I'm telling you the issue is handled. You can go." The guards exchanged glances, clearly unsure whether to argue with their boss or follow protocol. Protocol lost. "Yes, ma'am," the first guard said. They backed toward the door, still watching her like they weren't sure what they'd just walked into. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Ryan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was close. Too close. Olivia was already back at the terminal, typing faster now. "They're going to report this, which means we have maybe 10 minutes before someone higher up starts asking questions." "Can you access the backup logs in 10 minutes? "I can try." Ryan stood and moved closer, watching the screen over her shoulder. Lines of code scrolled past, timestamps and user IDs and system commands he couldn't make sense of. But Olivia knew exactly what she was looking for. Her eyes tracked the data with the kind of focus Ryan recognized from watching Emma do math homework. Total concentration, everything else forgotten. "There it is," Olivia said suddenly. "There it is?" On the screen, a work order entry glowed in the middle of a sea of other entries. Timestamp, 8:47 p.m., the night Ryan had been called to the executive floor. User ID, ADM_Hayes_M. "Who's that?" Olivia's face had gone white. "My brother." "You have a brother." "Yes." "Marcus, younger brother. He's been with the company for 3 years, working his way up through operations." Her voice was shaking now, barely controlled. "I got him that job. I vouched for him when the board said he wasn't ready. I trusted him. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe someone used his credentials. Maybe." But she didn't sound convinced. She pulled up another screen, this one showing security camera footage. "Let me check something." The footage was from the executive floor, the hallway outside Olivia's office. Olivia scrolled through timestamps until she found the one she wanted. 8:45 p.m. On screen, Ryan appeared, walking down the corridor with his toolbox, knocking on the office door, then entering. Olivia fast-forwarded. 2 minutes later, the alarms went off. Security poured in. Ryan was dragged out. But before any of that, in the 30 seconds between Ryan entering the office and the alarms starting, another figure appeared in the hallway. Distant, barely visible in the corner of the frame. A man in a suit, standing near the emergency stairwell, holding what looked like a phone. Olivia zoomed in. The image pixelated, but the face was clear enough. Marcus Hayes. "He was there," Ryan said quietly. He watched the whole thing. He set off the alarms remotely. Olivia's hands were shaking on the keyboard. "He used his admin access to send you the work order, waited for you to walk into my office, then triggered the security response to make it look like you were attacking me. But why?" Olivia closed her eyes. Because he wants me out. He's wanted me out since the day I took over the company. He thinks it should have been his, that our father made a mistake choosing me. So he's been sabotaging you. Systematically, for months. Olivia pulled up more files, her voice getting harder with each one. The climate control failures, the elevator malfunctions, the security glitches, it was all him. He's been using the building systems to destabilize operations, make it look like I can't maintain control. And when that wasn't enough, he tried to frame an innocent man to prove I was vulnerable. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. What's his end game? To get me removed, to convince the board I'm unfit to run the company. Olivia's jaw clenched. And it's working. 3 board members have already called for a vote of no confidence. If he can create one more major incident, one more public failure, they'll have the votes to force me out. Then we stop him. But what skeet? How? I can't accuse my own brother without proof the board will accept. And if I go public with this, Marcus will just claim I'm paranoid, that the stress has made me unstable. She looked at Ryan, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw real desperation in her eyes. He's been 2 steps ahead of me this entire time. Whatever I do, he's already planned for it. Ryan thought about that for a second. Then he looked at the terminal, at the evidence still glowing on the screen. What if we let him think he's still winning? What do you mean? You said he wants to create another incident, something big enough to force the board's hand. Ryan leaned against the desk, his mind working through the angles. So we give him the opportunity, but this time, we're ready for it. Olivia frowned. You want to set a trap? I want to catch him in the act, get undeniable proof that he's behind the sabotage. If he thinks you're vulnerable, he'll move fast. And when he does, we'll have everything we need to bury him. That's dangerous. If something goes wrong, it's already dangerous. For you, for me, for anyone who works in this building. Ryan met her eyes. You said you needed someone who couldn't be bought or threatened. Someone who knows these systems. That's me. So let me do my job. Boy. Olivia studied him for a long moment, and Ryan wondered what she saw. A maintenance worker in over his head? A desperate father with nothing to lose? Or maybe just someone who'd been pushed around too many times and was finally ready to push back. All right, she said finally. We set a trap. They spent the next hour planning. Olivia would announce a private meeting with the board. Something urgent, high stakes, the kind of thing Marcus wouldn't be able to ignore. She'd schedule it for late Friday night, 3 days from now, when the building would be mostly empty. And she'd make sure Marcus knew about it. Meanwhile, Ryan would be positioned in the maintenance areas near the executive floor, monitoring the building systems for any signs of sabotage. If Marcus tried anything, Ryan would catch it, and they'd have all the evidence they needed. It was a simple plan, which meant about 100 things could go wrong. Ryan left the building the same way he'd come in, through the maintenance tunnels and out the service entrance. The city was quieter now, the late-night buses running on skeleton schedules. He made it home just before midnight and found Mrs. Chen asleep on the couch, Emma curled up next to her. He woke Mrs. Chen gently, thanked her, and carried Emma to bed. She stirred but didn't wake, her small hand clutching at his shirt. Ryan sat on the edge of her bed for a while, just watching her breathe, thinking about all the ways this could blow up in his face. 3 days until the trap. 3 days to either save his job or lose everything. He didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, Ryan got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Mercer. The voice was smooth, confident, unfamiliar. This is Marcus Hayes. Ryan's blood went cold. How did you get this number? I make it my business to know things. I understand you've been spending time with my sister. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me. Marcus's voice hardened. You were in the building last night, server room, sub-level 2. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Ryan said nothing, his mind racing. If Marcus knew they'd been in the server room, then he knew they were looking for evidence, which meant the trap was already compromised. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued. You're going to stop helping Olivia. You're going to walk away, go back to your little apartment, and forget this ever happened. Because if you don't, I will make sure your daughter ends up in the system. Foster care. Bounced around from home to home. Is that what you want? Ryan's hand tightened on the phone. You stay away from her. Boss, I'm bought money in. Then stay away from my sister. Marcus's voice dropped to something colder. This is your only warning, Mr. Mercer. Take it. The line went dead. Ryan stood there for a long time, staring at the phone in his hand. Every instinct told him to do exactly what Marcus said. Walk away. Protect Emma. Forget Olivia Hayes and her billion-dollar problems. But then he thought about the look on Olivia's face in the server room. The fear, the exhaustion, the weight of carrying everything alone. He knew what that felt like. Ryan called Olivia. She answered on the second ring. Marcus just called me. There was a pause. What did he say? That he knows we were in the server room. That he'll go after Emma if I don't back off. Another pause, longer this time. When Olivia spoke again, her voice was tight. I'm sorry. I should have known he'd do something like this. If you want to walk away, I understand. I'm not walking away. Ryan? He threatened my daughter. He thinks that makes me weak, makes me easy to control. Ryan's voice was steady now, the fear burning away into something harder. He's wrong. This isn't your fight. Yeah, it is. The moment he dragged me into this, it became my fight. Ryan grabbed his jacket off the chair. When's the board meeting? Friday night, 9 p.m. Then we stick to the plan, and we make sure Marcus goes down. He'll be watching us now, every move. Good, let him watch. But Ryan hung up and looked at Emma, who was eating breakfast at the table, completely unaware that her entire world had just been threatened. She smiled at him, cereal milk on her chin, and Ryan made himself a promise right there. Whatever happened on Friday night, Emma would be safe, even if it cost him everything else. The next 3 days crawled by. Ryan stayed home with Emma, helped her with homework, made dinners that neither of them had much appetite for. Mrs. Chen kept asking if everything was okay, and Ryan kept lying and saying it was. He didn't tell Emma about Marcus's threat, didn't tell her that the man who'd ruined his life was now circling closer, looking for any opening to strike. But Emma knew something was wrong. Kids always did. Daddy, are we in trouble? They were sitting on the couch Thursday night, some animated movie playing on the TV that neither of them were really watching. Ryan looked at his daughter, at those wide brown eyes that saw too much, and wondered how to answer that. No, monkey, we're not in trouble. Then why do you look so scared? Ryan pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair. Because sometimes being brave means being scared and doing the thing anyway. What thing? The right thing. Oh. Emma didn't say anything, just snuggled closer. Ryan held her until she fell asleep, then carried her to bed and sat in the dark living room trying to figure out what the right thing actually was. Friday arrived faster than Ryan was ready for. He spent the morning double-checking his tools, making sure everything was in working order. He'd need to access junction boxes, control panels, maybe even the building's main electrical grid if Marcus tried to sabotage the power. Olivia had given him a temporary security pass that would get him into the restricted areas without triggering alarms, but it was only good for 12 hours. After that, he'd be locked out again. Mrs. Chen came over at 7. Ryan had told her he had one last job to finish, one last chance to get his position back. She didn't ask questions, just squeezed his hand and told him to be careful. Emma hugged him at the door. You're coming back, right? Always. Promise? Ryan kissed the top of her head. I promise. He made it to Hayes Tower by 8:30, entering through the same service entrance he'd used before. The building was quieter on a Friday night, just a skeleton crew of cleaning staff and security guards who barely glanced at him as he passed. Ryan took the service elevator up to the 70th floor, then the stairs to 72, his toolbox heavy in his hand. Olivia was waiting in a conference room near her office, dressed in the same sharp suit she wore in all the photos. Back to being the untouchable CEO. But when she saw Ryan, some of the tension in her shoulders eased. You made it. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd be smart enough not to. She glanced at her watch. The board members will start arriving in 20 minutes. I've made sure Marcus knows about the meeting. If he's going to try something, it'll be soon. Where do you need me? Maintenance control room, sublevel 1. You'll have access to every system in the building from there. Climate, power, security, everything. Olivia handed him a radio. Stay on this channel. If you see anything suspicious, tell me immediately. Ryan clipped the radio to his belt. What about you? I'll be in the conference room with the board. Marcus will be there too. He has a seat at these meetings as head of operations. I need him visible, where I can see him, so he can't slip away when things start going wrong. You think he'll do it himself? No, he's too smart for that. He'll have someone else trigger whatever he's planned. Olivia's expression was grim, which means we need to catch them in the act and trace it back to him. Ryan nodded. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was the only one they had. He made his way down to sublevel 1, navigating the familiar corridors until he reached the maintenance control room. It was smaller than the server room, just a closet full of monitors and control panels that managed everything from water pressure to elevator speeds. Ryan set up his equipment and pulled up the building schematics on the main screen. His radio crackled. Ryan, can you hear me? Olivia's voice, quiet but clear. Yeah, I've got you. The board is here. Marcus just arrived. He looks nervous. Good. Keep him talking. Ryan scanned the monitors, checking every system for anomalies. Temperature was stable. Power flow was normal. Security cameras were all operational. Everything looked fine, which meant Marcus hadn't made his move yet. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Ryan's shoulders were starting to ache from tension when the radio crackled again. Ryan, something's wrong. What is it? The temperature in the conference room just dropped. It's freezing in here. Ryan pulled up the climate control panel. Sure enough, the executive floor HVAC system had been overridden, the temperature setting pushed down to 40 degrees and dropping fast. He tried to access the controls, but they were locked. Someone's hacked the system, Ryan said into the radio. I can't override it from here. Can you shut it down? Not without shutting down climate control for the entire building, and that'll trigger emergency protocols. Do it anyway. We need to... The line cut to static. Ryan tried the radio again. Olivia? Olivia, can you hear me? Nothing. The radio was dead. Then the lights went out. Ryan's emergency flashlight kicked on automatically, cutting through the darkness with a thin beam that barely reached the walls. The control room monitors were dead, their screens black and lifeless. Every system in the building had just gone offline at once, which shouldn't have been possible unless someone had manually triggered a complete power shutdown from the main electrical grid. Someone like Marcus Hayes. Ryan grabbed his toolbox and ran for the door, his flashlight bouncing wildly as he sprinted down the corridor toward the stairs. The emergency lighting should have activated by now, battery-powered strips along the baseboards designed to keep the building navigable during outages. But those were dark too, which meant Marcus hadn't just cut the power. He disabled the backup systems. The stairwell was pitch black. Ryan took the steps 2 at a time, his breath coming hard, the metal railing cold under his palm. 72 floors up. That's where Olivia was, trapped in a conference room with board members and a brother who'd just shown his hand. Ryan had maybe 5 minutes before someone in that room started panicking, maybe less. He reached sub-level exit and pushed through the door into the main lobby. His flashlight caught movement, security guards running toward the executive elevators, radios crackling with confused chatter. One of them spotted Ryan. Hey, you're not supposed to be here. I'm maintenance, Ryan snapped, not slowing down. I'm fixing this. He didn't wait to see if they believed him. The service elevator was dead like everything else, so Ryan hit the stairs again, climbing fast. His legs were burning by the 10th floor. By the 20th, his lungs felt like they were tearing apart. But he kept moving, kept climbing, because somewhere 72 floors up, Olivia was alone with the man who'd orchestrated all of this. The radio on his belt crackled suddenly, spitting static and broken fragments of sound. Ryan yanked it free. Can't get the door open, temperature dropping. Ryan, if you can hear this. Olivia's voice, distorted but recognizable. Then more static. Ryan pressed the transmit button. I'm coming. Hold on. He didn't know if she heard him. The radio went silent again. By the 40th floor, Ryan's legs were shaking. By the 50th, he was moving on pure adrenaline and spite. The stairwell seemed to go on forever, flight after flight of concrete steps that blurred together in the beam of his flashlight. Sweat soaked through his shirt despite the cold. His toolbox felt like it weighed 100 pounds. But he kept climbing. When he finally burst through the door onto the 72nd floor, the temperature hit him like a physical force. It had to be below freezing up here. The air so cold it hurt to breathe. Ryan's flashlight swept across the executive corridor, catching frost forming on the windows, condensation freezing into delicate patterns that looked almost beautiful if you ignored what they meant. The conference room was at the end of the hall. Ryan ran toward it, his boots leaving prints in the thin layer of ice forming on the carpet. When he reached the door, he found it sealed shut, the electronic lock frozen in place. He could hear voices inside. Muffled, panicked, Ryan dropped his toolbox and pulled out a pry bar. The door was heavy, reinforced, designed to keep people out. But the lock mechanism was electronic, which meant it had failed along with everything else. He jammed the pry bar into the gap between door and frame and threw his weight against it. The door didn't budge. "Olivia!" Ryan shouted. "Can you hear me?" A pause. Then her voice, closer now. "Ryan? I'm getting you out. Step back from the door." He repositioned the pry bar, found better leverage, and pulled with everything he had. Metal groaned. The door shifted a quarter inch, then another. Ryan's shoulders screamed in protest, muscles threatening to tear. But he kept pulling until the lock mechanism finally gave with a crack that echoed down the corridor. The door swung open. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of fear and expensive cologne. The conference room was chaos, board members huddled near the windows, their breath visible in the freezing air, some of them on their phones trying to call for help. But it was Olivia that Ryan saw first. She was standing near the head of the table, her suit jacket draped over an older woman's shoulders, her own arms wrapped around herself against the cold. When she saw Ryan, relief flashed across her face so fast he almost missed it. "What the hell is happening?" one of the board members demanded. A man in his 60s, face red with cold and anger. "We've been trapped in here for 20 minutes. Oh shit, you shut party." "Someone sabotaged the building," Ryan said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Power's out. Security systems are down. You need to evacuate, now. We tried the elevators. Elevators are dead. Take the stairs. All of you. Move." The board members didn't need to be told twice. They filed out of the conference room in a rush, some of them still clutching their phones and briefcases like those things mattered. Ryan counted them as they passed. 7, 8, 9. Where was Marcus? "He's not here," Olivia said quietly, reading Ryan's expression. "He left 5 minutes before the power went out. Said he needed to check on something in operations. That son of a..." "He knew we'd be trapped. Knew we'd need someone to get us out." Olivia's jaw was tight. This was the plan. Make it look like another system failure. Another incident proving I can't maintain control. Except we know he did it. Knowing and proving are different things. She grabbed her phone off the table, useless without power or signal. "We need to find him. If he gets out of the building before we can..." A sound cut her off. Distant but unmistakable. Breaking glass. Ryan and Olivia exchanged a look, then ran for the corridor. The board members were already disappearing down the stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the dark. But the sound had come from the opposite direction, toward the east wing of the executive floor, where the private offices were, where Olivia's office was. They found the damage halfway down the corridor. One of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows had developed a crack, a long spiderweb fracture running from top to bottom. The freezing temperature had weakened the glass, and now it was failing under the pressure differential between the heated building interior and the frozen executive floor. "That's a $6 million window," Olivia said, her voice hollow. "It's going to shatter, but not if we can warm the floor up before the stress gets worse." Ryan was already moving toward the nearest climate-control junction box set into the wall behind a maintenance panel. He pried it open with the screwdriver from his belt and shone his flashlight inside. The circuitry looked intact, but without main power, nothing was running. "I need to get to the backup generator," he said. "If I can reroute power to this floor, The backup generator is in the basement. That's 15 floors down and back up again. You have a better idea?" Olivia looked at the cracked window, then at Ryan. "Yes, we find Marcus and make him undo whatever he did to the system. He's not going to cooperate. Then we make him." Ryan didn't argue. He sealed the junction box and followed Olivia deeper into the executive wing. The temperature was somehow even colder here, the frost on the windows thick enough to obscure the city lights beyond. Their breath came out in visible clouds. Ryan's fingers were going numb despite his work gloves. They found Marcus in Olivia's private office. He was standing at her desk, going through files with the casual confidence of someone who thought he'd already won. When they appeared in the doorway, he didn't even look surprised. Olivia, Mr. Mercer. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Turn the power back on, Olivia said. Her voice was ice. I can't do that. You triggered this. You can undo it. I triggered it, yes. But the shutdown protocol I used? It's on a timer, 30 minutes. The power won't come back until the timer runs out. And by then, he gestured at the cracked window visible through the office doorway. Well, let's just say the board will have plenty of evidence that you can't protect this building or the people in it. Ryan stepped forward. People could die. Uko. No one's going to die. Everyone's evacuating. They'll be fine. Marcus finally looked at Ryan, and his expression turned cold. I told you to walk away. I gave you a chance. Yeah, well, I'm not great at taking orders. Clearly. Marcus pulled something from his pocket, a phone, its screen glowing in the darkness. Security's been tracking your every move since you broke into that conference room, breaking and entering, interfering with corporate operations, threatening an executive. He held up the phone so they could see the video feed. Ryan and Olivia, filmed from a security camera angle, arguing with Marcus, except the audio was gone, replaced with silence that could be edited to say anything. When this is over, they won't just fire you, they'll prosecute. You're insane, Olivia said. I'm practical. Marcus pocketed the phone. You were never supposed to run this company, Olivia. Dad chose you because you were older, not because you were better. And every day you sit in that CEO chair is another day Hayes Corporation loses ground to our competitors. So you decided to destroy everything rather than let me succeed. I decided to save the company from your incompetence. Marcus's voice rose, losing some of its calculated calm. You think you're so strong, so capable. But I've seen you, Olivia. I've watched you fall apart. The panic attacks, the anxiety. You can barely hold yourself together, let alone an entire corporation. Olivia's face went white, not from the cold, from rage. You used my trauma against me. I used the truth. And when the board sees what happened tonight, how you failed to protect them, how you put them at risk, they'll finally understand what I've known all along. You're not fit to lead. Ryan had heard enough. He moved before Marcus could react, crossing the office in 3 steps and slamming him against the wall hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Marcus's phone clattered to the floor. Where's the override? Ryan demanded. Marcus laughed, even with Ryan's forearm pressed against his throat. There is no override, I told you. Timer. 30 minutes. And we're at, he glanced at his watch, 23 now. So unless you plan to throw me out that cracked window, I suggest you start evacuating. Ryan, Olivia's voice was quiet. Let him go. He's going to let people get hurt. Let him go. Ryan stepped back, breathing hard. Marcus straightened his jacket, his smile returning. Smart choice. Then Olivia hit him. It wasn't a slap or a shove. It was a full punch, her fist connecting with Marcus's jaw hard enough to snap his head sideways. He stumbled, caught himself on the desk, blood trickling from his split lip. That's for using my illness against me. Olivia's voice was steady, controlled. And this? She grabbed his laptop off the desk and held it up. Is for thinking I'm too weak to fight back. She opened the laptop. The screen glowed to life, running on battery power. Marcus's eyes went wide. That's password protected. With the same password you've used since high school. You're not as clever as you think. Olivia's fingers flew across the keyboard. You said the shutdown is on a timer, but timers can be accessed remotely if you know where to look. And you made a mistake, Marcus. You used your admin credentials to set this up, which means I can trace it. Marcus lunged for the laptop. Ryan caught him, shoving him back against the wall and holding him there. On the desk, Olivia kept typing, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Found it. She said. Building management system. Emergency shutdown protocol. Initiated by user. ADM_Hayes_M at 9:47 p.m. Timer set for 30 minutes. She looked up at Marcus, and override access available to anyone with CEO credentials. She hit a key. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then they came back on, flooding the office with harsh fluorescent brightness that made all of them squint. The heating system kicked in with a groan, warm air rushing through the vents. Marcus sagged against the wall, all the fight going out of him at once. "It's over," Olivia said. She closed the laptop and held it against her chest like evidence. "Security has every log, every command you entered, every system you sabotaged. And this—" She gestured at the office, at Marcus, at everything. "This is recorded on the building's backup cameras. The ones you didn't know about because I had them installed last month without telling anyone." Marcus's face went gray. "You planned this, Maz. I suspected. Ryan confirmed it, and you gave us exactly what we needed." Olivia's voice was cold, final. "You're done." The sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Security guards appeared in the doorway. Real ones this time, not the ones Marcus had manipulated. They took one look at the scene and moved toward Marcus. "Marcus Hayes, you're under arrest for corporate sabotage, criminal endangerment, and about a dozen other charges our legal team is going to love listing." The head guard pulled out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." "Wait!" Marcus's eyes locked on Olivia. "You can't do this. I'm your brother." "Who?" "You stopped being my brother the moment you tried to destroy everything I built." Olivia's expression didn't change. "Take him, Keith." They dragged Marcus out of the office, his protests fading as they disappeared down the corridor. Ryan and Olivia stood in silence for a moment, the heating system humming around them, the light steady overhead. "That went well," Ryan said finally. Olivia laughed. It was a broken sound, somewhere between relief and exhaustion. "We almost died, but we didn't. The window could have shattered, the board could have frozen, you could have been arrested again." She looked at him. "Why did you do it? Why risk everything?" Ryan thought about Emma, about the apartment, about 7 years of just surviving, never living, because someone needed to, and because you asked me to. That's not an answer. "Yeah, it is." Ryan picked up Marcus's phone from where it had fallen and handed it to Olivia. "You stood up for me when no one else did. Figured I owed you one." Olivia took the phone, her fingers brushing his for just a second. "I think we're past keeping score." They left the office together, walking back through the executive wing toward the stairs. The building was coming back to life around them, lights flickering on floor by floor, elevators humming back into operation, the normal sounds of Hayes Tower reasserting themselves after the chaos. Security was everywhere now, checking rooms, securing the scene, making sure everyone was accounted for. On the 70th floor, they ran into the board members. All 9 of them, huddled in a conference room with blankets someone had scrounged up, looking shaken but alive. When they saw Olivia, their expressions shifted from relief to something harder to read. The older man Ryan had seen earlier stepped forward. "Miss Hayes, we need to talk." "I understand," Olivia said, "and I'll answer every question you have. But first, I need to make sure everyone is safe, that the building is secure, that this never happens again. Your brother is in custody. He won't be a problem anymore." The man studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We'll reconvene on Monday. But Olivia—" He paused. "What you did tonight, coming back for us, getting us out, that took courage." "It took a maintenance worker with a pry bar," Olivia said, glancing at Ryan. "I just opened a door." The board member looked at Ryan for the first time, really looked at him. "Then we owe you our thanks, Mr. Mercer, Ryan Mercer." "Well, Mr. Mercer, Hayes Corporation is in your debt." Oops. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. The board members filed out, heading for the elevators that were finally working again. Olivia watched them go, her shoulders slumping slightly now that the immediate crisis was over. "You should go home," she said quietly. "Check on your daughter, make sure she's okay." "What about you?" "I'll be fine. I have about 100 fires to put out before morning." She managed a tired smile. "Metaphorical ones, hopefully." Ryan hesitated. Olivia looked exhausted, wrung out, like she might collapse the moment he left. But she was also still standing, still fighting, and that was more than most people could manage after everything that had just happened. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "I will." Ryan made his way down to the lobby and out into the Seattle night. The rain had started again, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. He caught the bus home and spent the entire ride staring out the window, his mind replaying everything that had happened. The blackout, the confrontation, the look on Marcus's face when he realized he'd lost. By the time Ryan got home, it was almost 2 in the morning. Mrs. Chen had fallen asleep on the couch again, and Emma was curled up in her bed, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Ryan stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching her breathe, letting the reality sink in. It was over, the sabotage, the threats, the constant fear that everything could fall apart at any second. It was finally over. He paid Mrs. Chen, thanked her, and locked the door behind her. Then he collapsed on the couch and slept for 12 hours straight. When he woke up, it was late afternoon and Emma was sitting on the floor watching cartoons, her homework spread out on the coffee table. She looked up when she heard him move. "You're awake. How long was I out?" "Forever. Mrs. Chen said you were really tired." "Yeah." Ryan sat up, his body aching in about 15 different places. "How was school?" Boring. We did fractions again." Emma paused. "Did you fix the thing?" "Yeah, monkey, I fixed it." "Good." She went back to her homework, apparently satisfied. Ryan watched her for a second, marveling at how simple her world still was. Problems got fixed, people came home, life went on. He wished it was always that easy. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Board meeting Monday at 9 a.m. You should be there." "Oh." Ryan stared at the message. Then he typed back, "Why?" The response came immediately. "Because I'm recommending you for a promotion, Director of Building Operations, if you want it." Ryan read the message 3 times to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. Director of Building Operations. That was a 6-figure job. Benefits. Security. The kind of position that meant Emma could have new clothes and school supplies without him having to choose between groceries and rent. "Do I have to wear a tie?" he typed. "Probably." Then I'm in." Emma looked up from her homework. "Who are you texting?" "Someone from work." "Are you going back?" "Yeah, I think I am." Emma smiled, and Ryan felt something in his chest loosen. For the first time in 7 years, the future didn't look like a series of obstacles to survive. It looked like something he might actually want to walk toward. That weekend passed in a blur. Ryan spent Saturday morning buying a tie at a discount store, then immediately regretting it because it looked cheap and he had no idea how to knot it properly. Emma helped him practice, giggling every time he got it wrong. By Sunday, he could tie a half-decent Windsor knot, and his hands had mostly stopped shaking when he thought about walking into a room full of executives. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Typical Seattle weather. Ryan dropped Emma at school, promised he'd pick her up on time, and caught the bus downtown. Hayes Tower looked different in daylight. Less intimidating, more like just another building. But Ryan's stomach was still doing flips when he walked through the main entrance. Olivia was waiting in the lobby. She was back in CEO mode. Suit, heels, hair pulled into a sleek bun that probably cost more than his entire outfit. But when she saw Ryan, she smiled, and it was genuine. "You came. You said I should." "I also said probably about the tie. You didn't have to actually wear one." Ryan tugged at the collar. Emma insisted. They took the elevator up to the boardroom, not the service elevator this time, but the executive one with mirrors and soft lighting and elevator music that was somehow more stressful than silence. Ryan caught his reflection and barely recognized himself. He looked like someone who belonged here, or at least someone who was trying to. The boardroom was full when they arrived. The same 9 board members from Friday night, plus a few others Ryan didn't recognize. Legal team probably, maybe HR. Everyone turned to look when he walked in, and Ryan resisted the urge to turn around and walk right back out. Olivia gestured to a chair near the head of the table. "Have a seat." "Joel..." Ryan sat. The leather squeaked under him. The older board member from Friday night cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for joining us. I'm Charles Brennan, chairman of the board." I believe you've met most of my colleagues under less than ideal circumstances. You could say that. A few of the board members smiled. Brennan didn't. We've spent the weekend reviewing what happened on Friday. The sabotage. The blackout. Your role in preventing what could have been a catastrophic incident. He paused. Ms. Hayes has recommended you for a significant promotion, Director of Building Operations. It's a leadership position with substantial responsibility and compensation. Asich, Sol Imoshanko. I understand. Do you? Brennan leaned forward. Because 3 days ago, you were a maintenance technician. A good one by all accounts, but still, this is a considerable leap. Ryan chose his words carefully. I know this building better than anyone. I know how the systems work, where the weak points are, how to keep things running, and I know what happens when someone tries to break them. He looked at Olivia, then back at Brennan. I also know what it's like to be on the bottom, to work hard and be invisible. If you give me this position, I'm not going to forget that. And I'm going to make sure the people who keep this building standing get the respect they deserve. Silence fell over the room. Ryan held Brennan's gaze, refusing to look away even though every instinct told him to. Finally, Brennan nodded. Well said. Ms. Hayes, you have the board's approval to proceed with the promotion. Olivia's expression didn't change, but Ryan saw the relief in her eyes. Thank you. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork. The meeting continued for another hour, mostly technical discussions about security protocols and system upgrades, and how to prevent another incident like Friday's. Ryan contributed where he could, mostly staying quiet and learning how these meetings worked. By the time it ended, his head was spinning with information and his tie felt like it was strangling him. Olivia walked him out. They stood in the corridor outside the boardroom, neither of them quite ready to say goodbye yet. You did good in there, Olivia said. I didn't throw up. That counts as good. She laughed. It's a start. Then her expression turned serious. Ryan, I meant what I said on Friday. Hayes Corporation owes you. I owe you. If there's anything you need, I need to pick my daughter up from school on time for once. Then go. Your new schedule starts tomorrow, 9 to 5, no overtime unless you approve it yourself. She held out her hand. Welcome to the team, Director Mercer. Ryan shook her hand, marveling at how strange it felt to be on equal footing with someone like Olivia Hayes. A week ago, she'd been untouchable. Now she was just a person. Complicated, damaged, trying to do her best. Like everyone else. See you tomorrow, he said. See you tomorrow. Ryan made it to Emma's school with 10 minutes to spare. She came running out with her backpack bouncing, her face lighting up when she saw him waiting. You came early. I had a good day. Did you get the job? I got the job. Emma threw her arms around him, and Ryan lifted her up, spinning her once before setting her down. They walked home together, Emma chattering about fractions and recess and some drama involving trading cards that Ryan only half understood. It was normal, mundane, exactly what he'd been fighting for. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat on the couch and let himself think about everything that had happened. A week ago, his life had been spiraling. Now, he had a job that paid enough to breathe, a future that looked stable, a daughter who wouldn't have to worry about whether they could afford winter coats. And somewhere across the city, Olivia Hayes was probably still working, still carrying the weight of a billion-dollar company, still fighting battles Ryan would never fully understand. But for one night, neither of them had to fight alone. Ryan's first day as Director of Building Operations started with a desk he didn't know how to use and a computer password he'd already forgotten twice. His new office was on the 65th floor, nothing like Olivia's penthouse suite, but still far enough from the maintenance tunnels that he felt like an imposter every time he sat down. The chair was leather, the desk was mahogany. There was a window that actually showed the city instead of a concrete wall. Emma had cried that morning when he'd put on the suit. Not sad crying, happy crying, the kind that made her laugh through the tears while she straightened his tie for the 4th time. You look important, she'd said. I look uncomfortable. Same thing. Now Ryan sat in his important, uncomfortable office, staring at spreadsheets he barely understood, and wondering if the board had made a mistake. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Conference room B, 10 minutes. Don't be late. Oh shit. Ryan grabbed a notebook he wasn't sure he needed and made his way down 2 floors to the conference room. Olivia was already there, along with 3 people Ryan vaguely recognized from the operations team. She gestured to an empty chair. "Director Mercer, thank you for joining us. These are your direct reports. Sarah handles facility maintenance, Tom oversees security systems, and Jennifer manages vendor relations." They all nodded at Ryan. He nodded back, hoping nobody expected him to say something profound. "We're implementing new security protocols after last week's incident," Olivia continued. "Every access point will require biometric verification. Every system override will need dual authorization, and every maintenance request will be logged and verified before dispatch." She looked at Ryan. "Your team will be responsible for implementing these changes building-wide. Questions?" Sarah raised her hand. "Timeline?" 3 weeks. Tom whistled low. "That's aggressive." "It's necessary." Olivia's tone left no room for argument. "Marcus's sabotage exposed vulnerabilities we can't ignore. If we don't fix them fast, the board will find someone who will." The meeting lasted an hour. Ryan took notes and tried not to look lost when people threw around terms like redundant fail-safes and integrated monitoring systems. By the time it ended, his hand was cramping and his brain felt like mush. Olivia caught him in the hallway afterward. "You looked overwhelmed in there." "I was overwhelmed in there." "Good. Means you're paying attention." She handed him a folder thick with documents. "These are the technical specs for the new systems. Read them tonight. Tomorrow we start implementation. And I need you to understand what we're doing and why." Ryan took the folder. "I'm a maintenance guy. I fix broken things. I don't redesign entire security infrastructure." You're not a maintenance guy anymore. You're a director, which means you learn fast or you fail fast. Olivia's expression softened slightly. "I didn't promote you because you're qualified, Ryan. I promoted you because you care. About this building, about the people in it, about doing things right. That matters more than experience. What if I screw up? Then you fix it. That's what directors do." She checked her watch. "I have another meeting. Read the specs. If you have questions, call me." She walked away before Ryan could respond, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the kind of confidence Ryan wished he could fake. He looked down at the folder in his hands, then at his office door visible down the corridor, and wondered how long it would take before someone realized he didn't belong here. The answer, apparently, was 3 days. Wednesday afternoon, Ryan was in the basement reviewing HVAC upgrades when Tom found him. The security systems manager looked stressed, his normally neat hair disheveled, his tie loosened. "We have a problem." Ryan set down his clipboard. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where someone tried to access the executive server room using Marcus Hayes' old credentials. 30 minutes ago." Ryan's stomach dropped. "I thought we deactivated his access." "We did. Which means someone cloned his credentials before the deactivation went through." Tom pulled out his tablet, showing Ryan's security footage. A figure in maintenance coveralls, face obscured by a baseball cap, swiping a keycard at the server room door. The lock flashed red. Access denied. The figure tried again, same result, then they walked away. "Did you get a face?" "No. They knew where the cameras were, kept their head down." Tom scrolled through more footage. "But here's the thing. They tried Marcus's credentials on 3 other doors before the server room. Storage closets, maintenance tunnels. Like they were testing to see what still worked. Testing for what? Access, information, I don't know." Tom looked grim. "But whoever this is, they know the building layout, and they know which systems Marcus was targeting." Ryan thought about Marcus, currently sitting in a jail cell awaiting trial. Thought about everything he'd orchestrated, all the people he'd manipulated. "You think he had help? Someone on the inside?" "I think we'd be stupid to assume he worked alone." Ryan grabbed his radio. "Where's Olivia?" "Executive floor, meeting with legal." "Tell her we need to talk, now." 20 minutes later, the 3 of them were in Olivia's office. Ryan, Tom, and Olivia herself, studying the security footage on Tom's tablet. The figure in the coveralls moved through frame after frame, methodical and careful, trying doors and walking away when they didn't open. "This was yesterday?" Olivia asked. 37 minutes ago, Tom corrected. "So they're still in the building." "Maybe, or they left through one of the service exits we don't monitor as closely." Tom pulled up a building schematic. "There are 6 possible exit points they could have used without appearing on camera. If they know the building well enough, they could walk out and we'd never know." Olivia's jaw tightened. "Lock down the building. Nobody leaves until we verify every employee ID against the security logs." "That's 800 people," Ryan said. "I don't care if it's 8,000. Whoever this is, they're not getting away." Tom left to coordinate with security. Ryan stayed, watching Olivia pace behind her desk like a caged animal. The calm, controlled CEO from the board meeting was gone, replaced by someone barely holding it together. "He's still doing this," she said quietly. "Even from a jail cell. Marcus is still finding ways to hurt me. We don't know if this is connected to Marcus. Of course it's connected. Someone tried to use his credentials, someone who knows what he was after." Olivia stopped pacing, her hands gripping the back of her chair. "I thought stopping him would be enough. I thought once he was arrested, once the board knew the truth, this would be over. Maybe it is over. Maybe this is just someone trying to capitalize on the chaos. Or maybe Marcus had a partner, someone who's finishing what he started." She looked at Ryan, and he saw the fear there, the same fear from that first night in her office. What if we didn't catch everyone? What if there are more people working against me? Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he said, "Then we find them. Same way we found Marcus. We set a trap and we wait." That almost got us killed last time. Last time we didn't know what we were looking for. Now we do. Ryan pulled out his phone, opening the Notes app. Whoever this person is, they tried to access specific areas. The server room first, which makes sense. That's where the data is. But also storage and maintenance areas. Why? Looking for something Marcus hid? What? Or looking for a way to access systems without being detected? Ryan thought about all the maintenance tunnels, the service corridors, the 100 hidden spaces in Hayes Tower that only someone who worked there would know about. What if they're not trying to sabotage the building? What if they're trying to get information, files, data, something Marcus couldn't access before he got arrested? Olivia sat down slowly. Marcus had limited clearance. There were files he couldn't touch, systems he couldn't override. If someone wanted those files, they'd need higher clearance, CEO-level access, which they can't get unless— Olivia's eyes widened. "Unless they steal my credentials." The pieces clicked together. Ryan leaned forward. "That's what this is about. Not sabotage, identity theft. They're trying to clone your access so they can get into systems Marcus couldn't reach. But my credentials require biometric verification, fingerprint, and retinal scan. They can't clone that." "No, but they could bypass it if they had physical access to your devices. Your laptop, your phone, anything with saved authentication." Ryan stood up. "Where's your laptop right now?" Olivia pointed to the desk. "Right there." "And your phone?" She pulled it from her pocket. "Here. What about backups? Spare devices? I have a tablet in my apartment and a secondary laptop in case—" She stopped. "In case of emergencies. It's in a safe in the executive gym downstairs. Only I know the combination." Ryan and Olivia looked at each other. "That's where they're going," Ryan said. "If they can get that laptop, they can access everything." Oh, they found Tom in the security office, coordinating the building lockdown. When Ryan explained their theory, Tom pulled up the gym's camera feed immediately. The executive gym was empty, the lights off, the equipment sitting silent in the darkness. "Nobody's been in there for 3 hours," Tom said. "What about before that?" Tom scrolled back through the footage. At 2:17 p.m., a maintenance worker entered carrying a toolbox. Male, medium build, wearing the same coveralls and cap from earlier. He walked straight to the locker area, spent 4 minutes inside, then left. "That's him," Olivia said. "He's already been there." They ran. Down 2 floors, through corridors Ryan was just starting to learn, into the executive gym that smelled like expensive equipment and the kind of cleaning products only rich people used. The locker area was in the back, past the treadmills and weight machines. Olivia's locker was second from the end, secured with a combination lock that looked untouched. She spun the dial with shaking hands. The lock clicked open. Inside, the safe was empty. "He took it," Olivia whispered. "He took the laptop." "How did he get the combination?" Tom demanded. "I don't know. I never told anyone. I never wrote it down." Olivia stared at the empty safe like she couldn't process what she was seeing. This is impossible. But Ryan was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "He has your laptop, which means he has access to your credentials, your files, everything. What's the worst-case scenario? What can he do with that?" Olivia's face went pale. "He can authorize wire transfers, access confidential contracts, leak proprietary information to competitors." She grabbed Ryan's arm. "He can destroy the company, everything my father built, everything I've been trying to protect. He can tear it all down." "Then we stop him before he does." "How? He could be anywhere. He could have already copied the data and disappeared." "No." Ryan shook his head. "He's still here. He tried those doors 30 minutes ago. The lockdown started 20 minutes ago. He's trapped inside the building somewhere, and he knows it." Tom was already on his radio, calling for security to sweep every floor, every corridor, every possible hiding place. Ryan thought about the figure in the maintenance coveralls, moving through the building with the confidence of someone who knew every camera angle, every blind spot. Someone who'd worked here. Someone who understood the systems as well as Ryan did. "I need to check something," Ryan said. He left Olivia and Tom in the gym and headed for the maintenance office on the 32nd floor. Not his fancy new office, but the old one where he'd spent 3 years before all this started. The door was locked, but Ryan still had his old key card. The lock beeped and let him in. The office was exactly how he'd left it. Desks covered in work orders, walls plastered with building schematics, a coffee maker that probably hadn't been cleaned in 6 months. But what Ryan was looking for was in the back corner, a filing cabinet labeled Personnel Records. He pulled open the drawer and started flipping through files. Current employees, former employees, contractors, temporary workers. Looking for anyone who'd left recently, anyone who might have had access to the building systems and a reason to help Marcus. He found it 3 files from the back. David Chen, maintenance technician. Employed for 5 years, terminated 2 months ago for repeated policy violations. But that wasn't what made Ryan's blood run cold. It was the photo stapled to the file. A man in his 30s, average height, dark hair, the kind of face that was easy to forget, the kind of face that could disappear into a crowd wearing a baseball cap and coveralls. Ryan grabbed the file and ran back to the gym. Olivia and Tom were still there, coordinating with security over the radio. When Ryan showed them the photo, Tom swore. "David Chen, I remember him. He got fired for accessing restricted areas without authorization, claimed he was just doing his job." "Marcus must have recruited him," Ryan said. "Probably before he got arrested. Set him up as a failsafe in case the sabotage plan didn't work." "So where is he now?" Olivia asked. Ryan thought about David Chen. Thought about what he would do if he was trapped in a building, holding a stolen laptop worth more than his life, knowing security was closing in. He'd go somewhere familiar, somewhere he knew better than anyone else. "The maintenance tunnels," Ryan said. "He's hiding in the tunnels." Bucket. The maintenance tunnels under Hayes Tower were a maze of concrete corridors and pipeline passages that stretched across 3 sublevels. Ryan had spent enough time down there to know the layout by heart, but David Chen had worked those tunnels for 5 years. He'd know every shortcut, every dead end, every place you could hide if you didn't want to be found. Security spread out across the tunnel entrances, blocking every exit. Ryan led a team into sublevel 1, Tom took sublevel 2, and Olivia insisted on coming despite everyone telling her it was a bad idea. "It's my company," she said. "I'm not hiding in my office while someone tries to destroy it." They moved through the tunnels in pairs, flashlights cutting through the darkness, radios crackling with updates from other teams. The tunnels were cold and damp, the walls sweating condensation that dripped onto the concrete floor. Every footstep echoed. Every shadow could be David Chen waiting with the laptop. Ryan's radio crackled. "This is Team 3. We've got movement in sublevel 2, east corridor near the electrical junction." Tom's voice came through. "I'm on it. All teams converge on sublevel 2. Ryan and Olivia changed direction, heading for the nearest stairwell that connected the sublevels. They hit sublevel 2 at a run, following the sound of shouting voices and running footsteps. The east corridor was a long stretch of tunnel, with junction boxes lining one wall and exposed pipes running overhead. At the far end, David Chen was trapped. He was pressed against the wall, the laptop clutched to his chest, security guards closing in from both directions. His face was pale, slick with sweat, his eyes darting for an escape that didn't exist. "It's over, David," Tom called out. "Put the laptop down." "I can't." David's voice was shaking. "He said he'd pay me. He said if I did this one thing, he'd make sure I never had to worry about money again." Marcus lied, Olivia said, stepping forward. Ryan tried to pull her back, but she shook him off. "He used you the same way he used everyone else. But this doesn't have to end with you in prison. Give me the laptop and we can work something out." "You're lying. You'll have me arrested just like him." "Maybe, but I'll also make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated. That counts for something." Olivia took another step closer, her hands raised, non-threatening. "You worked hard here, David. 5 years. You didn't deserve to get fired. But this, stealing from the company, helping someone sabotage us, this makes everything worse. Don't let Marcus destroy your life on top of everything else." David looked at the laptop, then at Olivia, then at the security guards surrounding him. Ryan could see the moment he realized there was no way out. His shoulders sagged. He set the laptop on the ground and stepped back, hands raised. Security moved in. They cuffed David and led him away, his protests fading as they disappeared down the corridor. Tom secured the laptop, checking it for damage. "Looks intact," he said. "I'll get IT to verify nothing was copied or transmitted." Olivia nodded, but she looked exhausted, like the last burst of adrenaline had burned through whatever reserves she'd been running on. Ryan touched her elbow. "You okay?" "No, but I will be." She looked at the laptop in Tom's hands. "How many more are there? How many other people did Marcus recruit before he got caught?" "I don't know, but we'll find them." "Will we? Or will they just keep coming one after another until there's nothing left to protect?" Olivia's voice cracked slightly. "I'm so tired, Ryan. I'm tired of fighting, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of wondering who I can trust." Ryan didn't have an answer that would make any of it better. So instead he said, "Let's get out of these tunnels. They're depressing as hell." That got a small laugh out of her. They made their way back to the surface, emerging into the lobby just as the sun was setting over Seattle. The building lockdown was lifted. Employees filed out in confused clusters, probably wondering what emergency had kept them trapped for 2 hours. By morning, rumors would be everywhere. By next week, it would be a story people told about the time Hayes Tower went crazy. But right now it was just Ryan and Olivia standing in the lobby, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly. "For what?" "For not running away. For staying even when this got dangerous and complicated and completely insane." She looked at him. "Most people would have quit the first week." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not." They stood there for another moment, and Ryan felt something shift between them, something that had been building since that first night when he'd walked into her office and seen past the CEO facade to the person underneath. Something that scared him almost as much as Marcus's sabotage had. His phone buzzed. Emma, asking when he'd be home for dinner. "I should go, Ryan said. "Yeah, me too." But Olivia didn't move. "Same time tomorrow?" "Same time tomorrow, Shoating." Ryan made it home by 7, which by his old standards was impossibly early. Emma was already at the table with homework spread out everywhere, and Mrs. Chen was stirring something on the stove that smelled like heaven. "You're early," Emma said, looking up with surprise. "New job, new hours. Does that mean you can help with my math?" Ryan hung up his jacket and sat down next to her. "Hit me with your worst, Yipo." They worked through fractions until dinner was ready, and Ryan marveled at how normal it felt. How easy. Like the past week of corporate conspiracies and stolen laptops and confrontations in maintenance tunnels had happened to someone else. By the time Emma went to bed, Ryan was almost convinced his life had achieved some kind of equilibrium. Then his phone rang. Olivia's number. "Please tell me nothing else has gone wrong," Ryan said by way of greeting. "Nothing's wrong. She paused. "I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For dragging you into this, for putting you in danger, for making your life more complicated than it needed to be." Ryan leaned back onto the couch, the apartment quiet around him. "You didn't drag me into anything. I chose this. And yeah, it's been complicated and dangerous and completely insane, but..." He stopped, trying to find the right words. "It's also been the first time in 7 years that I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Not just surviving, actually living." That's a low bar for mattering. Maybe, but it's my bar. Ryan smiled even though she couldn't see it. "Besides, someone had to save your life. Might as well be me." "You're never going to let me forget that, are you?" "Not a chance," Olivia laughed, and it sounded lighter than anything Ryan had heard from her before. "Okay, well, get some sleep. Tomorrow we're implementing phase 1 of the new security system, and I need you functional." "Yes, ma'am." "And Ryan, thank you for everything." The line went dead before he could respond. Ryan sat there for a while, staring at his phone, thinking about the woman on the other end of that call. The CEO who'd hired him, promoted him, trusted him with her company's future. The person who'd looked terrified in a frozen conference room and determined in a maintenance tunnel and grateful in a lobby at sunset. He wondered what happened next. If things went back to normal, him directing operations, her running the company, their lives intersecting only at scheduled meetings and security briefings. Or if something had fundamentally changed between them, something that couldn't be ignored or compartmentalized away. He didn't have an answer, but for the first time in a long time, Ryan found himself wanting to find out. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a marathon of system installations and security upgrades. Ryan's team worked around the clock, fitting biometric scanners at every access point, rewiring control panels, testing backup protocols until they were sick of seeing error messages. It was exhausting, technical, mind-numbing work that somehow felt important in a way fixing broken toilets never had. Olivia was everywhere during those weeks. Not micromanaging, just present, checking progress, answering questions, making sure everyone knew this mattered. Ryan saw her in conference rooms and maintenance closets, in the lobby at 6 a.m. and the executive floor at midnight. She looked tired but determined, like she'd decided that if her company was going to rebuild, she was going to be there for every step. They worked together more than Ryan had expected, planning installations, coordinating teams, troubleshooting problems that came up hourly. Somewhere in the middle of all that, the professional distance between CEO and director started eroding. Olivia stopped being Ms. Hayes and became just Olivia. Ryan stopped censoring himself and started saying what he actually thought. And when they disagreed, which was often, it felt less like a hierarchy and more like a partnership. "This is a terrible idea," Ryan said one night, staring at the installation schedule Olivia had just proposed. "It's efficient. It's going to piss off every maintenance worker in the building. You can't just shut down half the HVAC system during a Seattle summer. It's not summer, it's June, which is summer. It's 65 degrees outside, which is summer for Seattle." Ryan crossed his arms. "If you do this, I'm going to spend 3 days fielding complaints from people who are sweating through their suits, and then I'm going to forward all those complaints to you." Olivia stared at him for a second, then she laughed. "Fine, we'll phase the shutdown, but it's going to add 4 days to the schedule." "Better than a riot." "You're annoying when you're right. Get used to it." Those were the good days, the ones where everything worked and nobody got hurt, and Ryan went home feeling like maybe he knew what he was doing after all. But there were bad days too. Days when the new systems failed spectacularly, and Ryan had to explain to the board why half the building's elevators were stuck between floors. Days when former employees filed lawsuits and HR needed statements, and Ryan remembered he'd signed up to manage buildings, not navigate legal nightmares. Days when Emma got sick and Ryan had to leave work early and felt guilty about both places he wasn't. Through all of it, Olivia was there, not as his boss, as something else, something Ryan didn't have a name for yet. It was midnight on a Thursday when everything finally clicked into place. Ryan was in the security office, running final tests on the new authentication system, when Olivia appeared with 2 cups of coffee and a look on her face that said she hadn't slept in days. "I brought reinforcements," she said, handing him a cup. "You're a lifesaver." "I'm a workaholic. There's a difference." She sat down next to him, watching the test results scroll across the monitor. "How's it looking?" "Good. Everything's passing validation. We should be ready for full activation tomorrow." Tomorrow. Olivia repeated the word like she couldn't quite believe it. 3 weeks. We rebuilt the entire security infrastructure in 3 weeks. Your team rebuilt it. I just coordinated. You did more than coordinate. You made it happen. She looked at him, and Ryan saw something in her expression he hadn't seen before. Pride, maybe. Or respect. I couldn't have done this without you. Yeah, you could have. You'd have just been more stressed. I'm always stressed. That's the job. Olivia took a sip of her coffee, grimacing at the taste. This is terrible. It's from the break room. What did you expect? Standards. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The only sound, the hum of servers and the occasional beep from Ryan's monitor. Outside the windows, Seattle glittered in the darkness, the Space Needle visible in the distance like a promise that the city never slept. Can I ask you something? Olivia said eventually. Sure. Do you ever regret it, getting pulled into all this? Ryan thought about that, about the danger and the stress, and the nights he'd stayed awake wondering if he'd made the right choice. Then he thought about Emma's new school supplies, and the apartment's paid-up rent, and the fact that his daughter smiled more now than she had in years. No, he said. I don't regret it. Not even a little? Maybe a little when I'm filling out paperwork at 3 a.m., but mostly no. Olivia smiled. Good, because I have about 6 more projects lined up that are going to require your expertise. Of course you do. Welcome to corporate life, Director Mercer. Ryan raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. Living the dream. They finished their coffee and ran the last round of tests, and when everything finally passed validation, Olivia stood up and stretched, her spine cracking audibly. I'm going home, she announced, before I pass out in this office. Good idea. Get some sleep. What about you? I'll wrap up here and head out in 20. Liar, you'll stay another 2 hours and then feel terrible tomorrow. Ryan couldn't argue with that. Maybe 30 minutes. 20. I'm setting a timer. Olivia pulled out her phone and actually did it. If you're still here when this goes off, I'm docking your pay. You can't dock my pay for working late. Watch me. She left before Ryan could respond, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Ryan sat there for a second, smiling at nothing in particular, then turned back to his monitor to finish the last few tasks. But his mind kept drifting back to the conversation, to the way Olivia had looked when she'd said she couldn't have done this without him. Like maybe she meant it as more than just professional appreciation. Ryan's timer went off exactly 20 minutes later. He shut down the systems, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the elevator. The building was mostly empty this time of night, just a few security guards making their rounds, and the cleaning crew working their way through the lower floors. Peaceful. Calm. The way buildings were supposed to feel. When Ryan stepped outside, the rain had started again, light and steady, the kind that soaked through everything if you stood in it long enough. He pulled up his collar and started walking toward the bus stop, his mind already jumping ahead to tomorrow. Full system activation, the culmination of 3 weeks of brutal work. Either everything would go smoothly or it would be a disaster that made the news. No pressure. His phone buzzed, a text from Olivia. Did you leave? Ryan typed back. Yes. Timer worked. I'm traumatized. Good. See you at 7 tomorrow. Don't be late, but I'm never late. You were late to the board meeting. That was one time. Still counts. Ryan smiled and pocketed his phone. The bus appeared around the corner, its headlights cutting through the rain. He climbed aboard, found a seat near the back, and watched Seattle blur past the windows. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Olivia was probably still awake, probably still working despite her promise to go home and sleep. They were more alike than Ryan had realized, both of them running on fumes and determination, both of them too stubborn to admit when they needed help, both of them carrying weight that nobody else could see. Maybe that's why this worked, why they worked. The thought stayed with Ryan all the way home, and when he finally collapsed on his couch at 1 a.m, it was the last thing he thought about before sleep claimed him. Tomorrow the real test would begin. Not just for the security systems, but for whatever this thing between him and Olivia was becoming, and Ryan had no idea if he was ready for either. The new security system went live at 7 a.m. on a Friday, and for the first 2 hours, Ryan held his breath waiting for something to explode. But the biometric scanners worked. The authentication protocols held. Employees swiped their badges and pressed their thumbs to screens and walked through doors like it was the most natural thing in the world. By 9 o'clock, Ryan started to believe they might actually pull this off. By 9:30, the first complaint arrived. "The scanner on 42 keeps rejecting my fingerprint," someone from accounting said over the phone. "I've tried 6 times. Ryan grabbed his toolkit. "I'll be right there." He spent the next 3 hours running between floors, fixing calibration issues and resetting terminals that had locked up for no apparent reason. It was maintenance work dressed up in a director's title, and Ryan found himself oddly relieved. This, he understood. This he could fix. Olivia caught him in a stairwell around noon, her arms full of folders and her hair starting to escape its bun. "How bad is it?" "Scale of 1 to 10? Maybe a 4? Nothing catastrophic." "That's better than I expected." She shifted the folders to her other arm. "The board wants a progress report this afternoon. Can you be there?" "Do I have to wear the tie again?" "Yes." "Then I'll be there." The board meeting went smoother than Ryan anticipated. He presented the implementation data, fielded questions about system redundancies and failure protocols, and managed not to sound like an idiot when Charles Brennan asked about long-term maintenance costs. When it was over, Brennan actually shook his hand. "Well done, Director Mercer. You've exceeded expectations." Ryan wasn't sure what the expectations had been, but he'd take it. That weekend, Ryan took Emma to the aquarium. They stood in front of the jellyfish tank for 20 minutes, watching the translucent creatures pulse through the water with a grace that seemed impossible for something without a brain. "They're weird," Emma said. "Yeah, but they've been around for millions of years, so they're doing something right." "Dad, are you comparing yourself to a jellyfish?" Ryan laughed. "Maybe a little." "That's weird, too." They got ice cream afterward and walked along the waterfront, and Emma talked about school and her friends and a book she was reading about dragons. Normal kid stuff. The kind of conversation Ryan used to worry they wouldn't have time for anymore. But here they were, ice cream dripping onto their hands, the Seattle skyline rising behind them like a promise that things could be okay. "Dad?" Emma said eventually. "Yeah? Are you happy?" "Yeah." The question caught Ryan off guard. He looked down at his daughter, at her serious expression and the chocolate smudge on her chin. "Why are you asking?" "Because you smile more now, and you don't look as tired." Ryan's chest did that tight thing it always did when Emma said something too perceptive. "Yeah, monkey. I'm happy." "Good." Emma went back to her ice cream, apparently satisfied. "Mrs. Chen says happiness looks good on you." "Mrs. Chen needs to mind her own business." "She says that too." Monday morning arrived with rain and a calendar full of meetings Ryan still wasn't used to attending. He sat through budget reviews and department updates, and a presentation about building sustainability that put half the room to sleep. By lunch, his brain felt like mush, and his tie felt like a noose. He found Olivia in her office, staring at her computer screen with the kind of intensity that meant nothing good. "What's wrong?" "Marcus's trial date got moved up, 3 weeks from now." She didn't look away from the screen. "His lawyers are pushing for a plea deal. Reduce charges in exchange for testimony about corporate vulnerabilities. Can they do that?" Ish. "They can try. Whether the DA accepts it is another question." Olivia finally looked at Ryan, and he saw the exhaustion there, the kind that sleep couldn't fix. "If Marcus testifies, he's going to drag every mistake I've ever made into a public courtroom, every panic attack, every decision the board questioned, everything I've worked to overcome. He's trying to destroy you even from prison. He's trying to prove he was right, that I was never fit to run this company." She closed her laptop with more force than necessary, And the worst part is, some days I think he might be. Ryan sat down across from her. You don't actually believe that, don't I? Look at what happened. My own brother sabotaged me for months and I didn't see it coming. I trusted him. I vouched for him. And he used every weakness I had against me. That's not on you. That's on him. But the weakness was real, Ryan. The panic attacks, the anxiety, the nights I couldn't breathe, those are real. And every time Marcus points them out in court, every time his lawyers argue I'm mentally unstable, they're not wrong. Her voice cracked slightly. I am unstable. I do struggle. And maybe that does make me unfit to lead. That's bullshit. Ryan's tone was sharper than he intended. You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who kept showing up even when they were terrified. Someone who admitted they needed help instead of pretending everything was fine. Someone who fought for their company and their people even when their own brother was trying to tear them down. He leaned forward. That's not weakness, Olivia. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. She stared at him, and for a moment Ryan thought he'd overstepped. Then her expression softened into something he couldn't quite read. You're biased. Damn right I'm biased. You promoted me. That got a small smile. I promoted you because you deserved it. See? Biased. Olivia laughed, and the tension in the room eased slightly. She opened her laptop again, pulled up a document, and pushed it across the desk toward Ryan. I'm giving a statement to the press next week. About the sabotage, about Marcus, about everything that happened. Ryan scanned the document. It was straightforward, factual, carefully worded to avoid legal complications, and completely impersonal. This reads like a corporate memo. That's the point. No, the point is to tell the truth. And the truth isn't this sanitized version where everything sounds manageable and under control. Ryan looked at her. You said you're tired of hiding, so don't hide. Tell them what actually happened. Tell them you have panic attacks and anxiety, and that running $1 billion company while dealing with that is hard as hell. Tell them your brother exploited your vulnerability and you fought back anyway. The board will never approve that. Then don't ask for their approval. Olivia stared at the document, then at Ryan, and he could see her weighing the risk. The professional thing to do was stick with the safe statement. The smart thing was to protect herself from criticism. But the right thing, the honest thing, was to stop pretending she was invincible. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I'm asking. Ryan left her office and spent the rest of the afternoon in meetings he barely paid attention to. His mind kept circling back to the conversation, to the look on Olivia's face when he'd called her strong. He'd meant it, every word, but saying it out loud had felt like crossing some invisible line they'd been dancing around for weeks. That evening, Ryan picked Emma up from school and took her to the grocery store to stock up on actual food instead of the takeout they'd been living on. Emma pushed the cart while Ryan navigated the aisles, tossing in pasta and vegetables and the expensive cereal Emma liked that he could finally afford. Dad, can we get cookies? We have cookies at home. Those are the cheap ones. They're cookies. They're all the same. That's what poor people say. Ryan stopped walking. Where did you hear that? Emma's face went red. I didn't mean some kid at school said his dad said, Emma, I'm sorry. Ryan crouched down so they were eye level. We're not poor anymore, but we were for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that. You understand? Emma nodded, looking miserable. And those cheap cookies? They kept us fed when we couldn't afford anything else. So we're grateful for them, not ashamed. Got it? Got it. Good. Ryan stood up and tossed a package of the expensive cookies into the cart. But we can still get these sometimes. Emma's face brightened. Really? Really? They finished shopping and loaded everything into the car Ryan had finally been able to afford. Nothing fancy, just a used sedan that didn't break down every other week. On the drive home, Emma chattered about her day, and Ryan listened with half his attention while the other half stayed stuck on the conversation with Olivia. She was going to give that press conference. Ryan knew it the same way he knew when a system was about to fail or when Emma was lying about finishing her homework. Olivia Hayes didn't back down from fights. She just needed someone to remind her that being vulnerable wasn't the same as being defeated. The press conference happened on a Wednesday afternoon in the lobby of Hayes Tower, with reporters crammed into every available space and cameras pointed at the podium like weapons. Ryan watched from the second-floor balcony, staying out of sight, but close enough to see Olivia's face. She looked terrified, but when she started speaking, her voice was steady. 2 months ago, my brother Marcus Hayes initiated a systematic sabotage campaign against Hayes Corporation. He manipulated building systems, framed innocent employees, and exploited confidential information in an attempt to force my removal as CEO. Olivia paused, her hands gripping the podium. But this statement isn't just about what he did. It's about why he thought he could succeed. She pulled out a different paper than the one Ryan had seen, not the sanitized corporate statement, something else. For the past year, I've been dealing with severe anxiety and panic attacks. Some of you may have noticed I've been less visible at public events, that I've declined interviews and avoided situations where I might be under intense scrutiny. That wasn't because I was hiding scandals or incompetence. It was because I was struggling with a mental health condition that made my job significantly harder than it should have been. The reporters stirred, cameras flashed. Ryan held his breath. My brother knew about this struggle, and instead of supporting me, he weaponized it. He used my panic attacks as evidence that I was unfit to lead. He created situations designed to trigger anxiety episodes. He told board members and executives that I was mentally unstable and needed to be removed for the good of the company. Olivia's voice hardened. And for a while, I believed him. I believed that my anxiety made me weak, that admitting I needed help was the same as admitting I couldn't do my job. She looked directly at the cameras. I was wrong. Mental illness doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And pretending you're invincible when you're not doesn't make you strong. It makes you a liar. Olivia's grip on the podium loosened slightly. I'm not going to lie anymore. I have anxiety. I have panic attacks. Some days are harder than others, but I'm also a competent CEO who has grown this company by 40% over 5 years. Those two things can coexist. And anyone who says that they can't is someone who's never had to fight their own brain just to get through a meeting. The lobby was silent. Ryan felt something tight in his chest loosen. Marcus will face trial for his actions. The evidence against him is substantial, but regardless of the outcome, I want to be clear about something. Olivia straightened. I'm not stepping down. I'm not hiding, and I'm not ashamed. Hayes Corporation will continue to move forward under my leadership, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with our board of directors, who, I should mention, unanimously voted to support my continued role as CEO. She stepped back from the podium. I'll take a few questions now. The reporters erupted. Ryan watched Olivia field questions with the same controlled intensity she brought to everything else, deflecting the invasive ones and answering the relevant ones with a candor that seemed to catch everyone off guard. By the time the press conference ended 20 minutes later, the narrative had shifted. It wasn't about whether Olivia was fit to lead. It was about whether corporate America was ready to acknowledge that mental health struggles didn't disqualify you from success. Ryan met her in the private elevator afterward. She looked drained, but also lighter somehow, like she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying for too long. That was either brilliant or career suicide, she said. I can't tell which. Does it matter? Not really. I meant every word. I know. Ryan leaned against the elevator wall. You were right, by the way, about not hiding anymore. That took guts. Or stupidity. The line's pretty thin. Most good decisions are. The elevator opened onto the executive floor. They walked to Olivia's office in comfortable silence, and Ryan realized this had become routine. The late-night conversations, the shared exhaustion, the unspoken understanding that they were in this together. When they reached her door, Olivia turned to face him. Thank you for pushing me to be honest. I don't think I would have had the courage without... You had the courage the whole time. You just needed permission to use it. Olivia studied his face for a long moment, and Ryan felt that invisible line between them shift again, pulling tighter. Ryan, his phone rang. Emma's school. Ryan's stomach dropped as he answered. Mr. Mercer, this is Principal Anderson. Emma's fine, but there was an incident today and we need you to come pick her up. 20 minutes later, Ryan was sitting in the principal's office with Emma beside him, her face blotchy from crying. Apparently, the kid who'd made the comment about poor people had escalated to calling Emma names at recess. Emma had responded by shoving him into the dirt. Now both kids were suspended for the rest of the day. I'm sorry, Emma whispered once they were in the car. For shoving him or for getting caught? Both? Ryan couldn't help but smile. You know, violence isn't the answer. I know. But sometimes it feels really satisfying. Emma looked up at him, surprised. You're not mad? I'm a little mad, but I'm also proud you stood up for yourself. Ryan started the car. Next time, use your words first, and if that doesn't work, use your words louder. And if that doesn't work, then we'll have another conversation about appropriate responses to bullies. They stopped for ice cream on the way home. Suspended kids still deserved treats if they'd been defending themselves. And Emma gradually relaxed back into her normal self. By the time they got to the apartment, she was laughing about something that had happened at lunch, and Ryan was reminded again why he'd fought so hard to give her a better life. Not for the money, or the title, or the security. For moments like this. For the freedom to pick your kid up from school and get ice cream without worrying whether you could afford it, or whether your boss would fire you for leaving early. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Ryan sat on the couch and finally let himself think about what had almost happened in Olivia's office before the phone rang. The way she'd looked at him, the way his name had sounded in her voice, the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something neither of them knew how to navigate. His phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Is Emma okay? Oh, Ryan typed back. She's fine, suspended for defending herself. I'm choosing to call it character building. That's one way to frame it. How did the press conference fallout go? Mixed. Some people think I'm brave, some people think I'm unstable. Most people just want to know if the company's stock will tank. A pause. But I'm glad I did it. Me too. Another pause, longer this time. Then, what were we about to talk about? Before your phone rang? Ryan stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He could deflect, make a joke, pretend he didn't know what she meant, or he could be honest, the same way she'd been honest at that press conference. He typed, I think we were about to have a conversation that's probably not a great idea. Why not? Well, because you're my boss. Because this could complicate everything. Because I have a daughter to think about, and you have a company to run, and mixing personal feelings with professional relationships is how people get hurt. Those are all good reasons. Yeah, but? Ryan hesitated, then, but I'm tired of pretending I don't care about you as more than just my boss. The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Ryan's heart was hammering against his ribs. Finally, I'm tired of pretending too. Ryan read the message 3 times. Then he typed, So what do we do about it? I don't know. Take it slow, see where things go, try not to screw it up. That's not much of a plan. It's the best I've got. Ryan smiled at his phone. Okay, slow. I can do slow. Good, because I'm terrified. Of what? Of this not working. Of losing you as a friend if we try to be more. Of messing up the one good thing that's happened to me in a long time. Ryan's chest tightened. You're not going to mess this up. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because we both care too much to let that happen. Another pause, then, get some sleep, Ryan. We'll figure this out. Good night, Olivia. Good night. Wait. Ryan set his phone down and stared at the ceiling for a long time, thinking about how life never went the way you planned. 6 months ago, he'd been a maintenance worker barely scraping by, convinced his life would never be more than survival and sacrifice. Now he was a director with a daughter who smiled more and a future that looked like something worth fighting for. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, he'd fallen for the woman who'd given him a chance when no one else would. It was messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea, but it was also real. And Ryan had spent too many years living in fear of taking risks to back down now. The next few weeks passed in a blur of normalcy that felt almost surreal. Work settled into a routine. Emma thrived at school. Ryan's bank account looked healthy for the first time in his life. And slowly, carefully, he and Olivia started navigating whatever this thing between them was becoming. They had coffee together on Tuesday mornings, lunch in her office on Thursdays, late-night phone calls when they were both too wired to sleep. Nothing dramatic or rushed. Just two people getting to know each other outside the context of corporate crises and maintenance emergencies. Ryan learned that Olivia had wanted to be a teacher before her father died and left her the company. That she stress-baked at 2 in the morning and was terrible at it. That she'd been engaged once to someone her father approved of and had called it off 3 weeks before. The wedding because she couldn't imagine spending her life with someone she didn't actually love. Olivia learned that Ryan had wanted to be an architect but couldn't afford college, that he still drew building designs in notebooks he kept hidden in his desk, that Emma's mother had left because she'd said she felt trapped, and Ryan had spent 3 years wondering if he was the kind of person people wanted to escape from. "You're not," Olivia said one night when Ryan told her that story. They were sitting in his apartment, her first time there, late on a Friday after Emma had gone to bed. "You're the kind of person who makes people feel safe. That's rare." Lauren didn't feel safe. Lauren made her own choices. That's not on you. Ryan wanted to believe that. Some days he even did. Marcus's trial started on a Monday in late July. Olivia sat in the courtroom every day, her face carefully neutral while lawyers on both sides presented evidence and testimony. Ryan went with her when he could, sitting in the back row and watching the woman he cared about endure having her entire life dissected for public consumption. The prosecution presented security logs, financial records, testimony from employees Marcus had manipulated. The defense argued that Marcus had only been trying to protect the company from an unstable CEO, that his actions were motivated by concern rather than malice. It was brutal. But Olivia never looked away. On the 5th day of testimony, the prosecution called Olivia to the stand. Ryan watched her walk to the witness box with her head high, and he felt a surge of pride so intense it almost hurt. The prosecutor asked her to describe the sabotage, the panic attacks, the night the building went dark. Olivia answered each question clearly, factually, without drama or embellishment. Then the defense attorney stood up. "Ms. Hayes, you've stated that you suffer from severe anxiety and panic attacks. Isn't it possible that these conditions impaired your judgment? That you misinterpreted your brother's actions as sabotage when he was simply trying to help?" Olivia looked at the attorney with an expression Ryan had seen before, the one she wore when someone underestimated her. "No, it's not possible." "How can you be certain?" "Wait, because my anxiety doesn't make me delusional. It makes me anxious. There's a difference." Olivia's voice was steady, controlled. "I know the difference between a panic attack and a security breach, between feeling overwhelmed and being actively sabotaged. And I know my brother used my condition against me because he told me he was doing it. According to your testimony, according to the security logs, according to the witness statements, according to the evidence." Olivia leaned forward slightly. "My mental health struggles are real. So is what my brother did. Those two facts aren't mutually exclusive, no matter how much you want them to be." The defense attorney tried a few more angles, but Olivia didn't waver. By the time she stepped down from the stand, the jury looked convinced. Ryan certainly was. The verdict came back 3 days later. Guilty on all counts. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in prison for corporate sabotage, fraud, and criminal endangerment. When the judge read the sentence, Olivia sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her face unreadable. Ryan walked her out of the courthouse afterward, through a crowd of reporters shouting questions they both ignored. They made it to her car in silence, and only when they were safely inside with the doors locked did Olivia finally let herself react. She didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, breathing slowly like she was counting each inhale and exhale. "You okay?" Ryan asked quietly. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." They sat there for a while, the courthouse steps visible through the windshield, the city moving around them like nothing monumental had just happened. Eventually, Olivia started the car. "I need to go somewhere," she said. "Will you come with me?" "Where?" "You'll see." She drove them to a park on the edge of the city, a small green space with walking trails and a view of the water. They got out and walked in silence, following a path that wound through trees and eventually opened onto a bench overlooking the Sound. Olivia sat down. Ryan joined her. "My father used to bring me here," she said after a moment. "When I was a kid, he'd say it was where he came to think, to make big decisions." She looked at the water. "I haven't been back since he died." Why now?" "Because I needed to remember that this company, all of it, started because my father wanted to build something that mattered, something that would last." Olivia's voice was soft. Marcus forgot that. He got so focused on who was in charge that he lost sight of why it mattered in the first place. "What about you? Did you lose sight of it?" "For a while, yeah, I was so busy trying to prove I deserved to lead that I stopped thinking about what I was actually leading toward." She looked at Ryan. But I'm remembering now. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You reminded me that a company is made of people, that the maintenance workers and security guards and everyone else who keeps the building running matters as much as the executives. That taking care of them isn't weakness. It's the whole point. Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just reached over and took her hand. Olivia's fingers tightened around his, and they sat there watching the sun set over the water. Two people who'd spent months fighting battles they'd never expected to face and somehow ended up exactly where they needed to be. 3 months later, Ryan stood in his new apartment, bigger, brighter, in a better neighborhood, and watched Emma run from room to room with the kind of excitement only a 7-year-old moving into her first real bedroom could manage. Dad, I have a closet. You had a closet before. A real one, with doors that close. Mom. Ryan laughed and went back to unpacking boxes. The move had taken all weekend, but they were finally here, finally settled, finally stable in a way that didn't feel like it could collapse at any second. His phone rang. Olivia. How's the new place? Emma's thrilled about the closet doors. That's the dream. A pause. Are you still okay with dinner tonight? I know you're exhausted. I'm fine. Emma's going to Mrs. Chen's. I'll pick you up at 7. You don't have to pick me up. I can drive. Olivia. Fine. You can pick me up. Ryan smiled and hung up. He and Olivia had been officially together for 2 months now, though officially was a loose term since they were both still figuring out how to navigate a relationship where one of them was the other's boss. The board knew. HR knew. Emma definitely knew, and had opinions about it that she shared frequently. But mostly, it worked. They worked. Imperfectly, awkwardly sometimes, but honestly. And after everything they'd been through, honesty felt like more than enough. That evening, Ryan drove to Olivia's apartment and picked her up for dinner at a restaurant neither of them could really afford, but decided to try anyway. They talked about work, and Emma, and the fact that Charles Brennan had announced his retirement and recommended Olivia personally choose his replacement on the board. That's huge, Ryan said. It's terrifying, but yeah, it's huge. Olivia smiled. I'm thinking about offering the position to someone outside the company. Fresh perspective. Good idea. You think everything I do is a good idea. That's not true. I thought your plan to install the biometric scanners in 2 weeks was insane. And I was right. You were lucky. Same thing. They argued about that for a while, laughing, and Ryan realized this was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of struggle or fear, but the presence of someone who made the struggle feel worth it. Someone who'd seen you at your worst and decided to stay anyway. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the city lights reflecting off the water in broken patterns that reminded Ryan of that first night in Hayes Tower. The alarms, the fear, the moment everything changed. He'd been so sure his life was ending. Turned out it had just been beginning. What are you thinking about? Olivia asked. About how none of this was supposed to happen. I was supposed to stay invisible, keep my head down, raise Emma and survive. And instead, I got a promotion and a girlfriend and a life that doesn't feel like survival anymore. Olivia stopped walking and turned to face him. Is that what I am? Your girlfriend? Ryan's heart skipped. I mean, if you want a different title. No, girlfriend works. She smiled. I just wanted to hear you say it. You're exhausting. You love it. Mercer. And the thing was, he did. He loved all of it. The complications and the chaos and the fact that every day with Olivia meant navigating something unexpected. He'd spent 7 years living in fear of anything that disrupted his carefully controlled world. Now he was learning that disruption wasn't always destruction. Sometimes it was just life reminding you that the best things happen when you stop trying to control everything and start trusting that you'll figure it out as you go. They walked back to the car hand in hand, and Ryan thought about Emma asleep at Mrs. Chen's, about the new apartment waiting for them, about the job he still couldn't quite believe was real. He thought about Marcus in prison and David Chen facing trial, and all the ways things could have gone differently if he'd made one wrong choice at any point along the way. But mostly, he thought about the woman walking beside him, the CEO who'd looked terrified in a frozen conference room and determined in a courthouse and happy on a waterfront at night. The person who'd reminded him that vulnerability wasn't weakness and that admitting you needed help wasn't failure. The person who'd changed everything. Life had taught Ryan that security was an illusion, that stability could vanish overnight, that nothing was ever really guaranteed, but it had also taught him something more important. That sometimes the people who save you aren't the ones who rescue you from danger. They're the ones who show you that you're strong enough to rescue yourself. That asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. That the weight you've been carrying alone is lighter when someone offers to share it, not because they have to, but because they choose to. And in the end, that choice, to show up, to fight, to care even when it's terrifying, that's what separates surviving from actually living. Ryan had spent 7 years surviving. Now, finally, he was ready to live.